morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Lisa Schwartz, and it is truly my great pleasure to have Gabrielle Davidson with us today on a really interesting topic, something that we've never really covered before. Gabrielle is a managing partner, with Gartner, but actually she and I met at her previous job. And we do have, so Gabrielle, let me stop for a second and let you say hello to everyone.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. I think our conversation is going to be super interesting and relevant to wherever you might be in your career journey. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Lisa.
So just a couple of quick pieces of housekeeping. I see people are still rolling in. We did carve out time at the end to do a Q&A session. We love to do the Q&A sessions. So as we go through this presentation today, please be gathering your questions. And I hope that you guys have a lot, because I'll tell you, Gabrielle is talking about something today that was new to me, and I think might be new to several of you guys as well. Also, we're going to throw in the chat the link to the presentation. It's also available up on our website, but you guys can follow along and take notes that way if you'd like to. And then, as always, we'll be loading this up to our YouTube channel as a recording. So Gabrielle has some, I bet you didn't know this, but we're asking you to do a little bit of work today and a really quick self-assessment so we can baseline and learn about the folks who have joined us today. So Nina, if you could throw that up for us, and Gabrielle, if you could kind of walk us through that.
Sure. Well, everyone sees the agenda. If I could just quickly cover that and then go into the questions. So, as Lisa said, my name is Gabrielle Davidson, and I'm here to talk to you about how to break barriers, both personally and professionally. And we're going to do this through looking at the right certifications and Ikigai. So for those of you who haven't heard of this concept before, it's the Japanese words Iki, which means meaning of life, and Gai, which means meaning, worth, or value. So put together, it loosely translates into the reason for being. So think of it in terms of what makes you jump out of the bed in the morning. Now, I've spent the last 20 years looking for my balance and sense of fulfillment, and it has taken me on a journey through several government agencies, consulting firms, both large and small. So if your story is anything like mine, you've been looking for a change, more fulfillment in your life. So in the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to give you some alternative ways to think about the barriers that are preventing you from feeling happy and fulfilled. So to do that, we have to first be able to honestly ask yourself, who am I? So in doing this, we'll talk about, I'm referring to the slide in front of you now, we'll be talking about the theme of being a unicorn in a field of horses by first baselining who we think we are. And that's the self-assessment poll that Lisa was referring to. Then we're going to use the Japanese concept of Ikigai to align your why to your professional certifications, followed by tips, tricks, and pitfalls. And then we'll wrap up with a summary of how to unleash your reason for being. So I'm going to go ahead now, Lisa and Nina, and move to the next slide, which has the 9 questions. So this is a technique to align your pursuit of certifications to your Ikigai. And as the questions go up, you just need to choose, if you strongly agree or you strongly disagree. I don't see it on my end, Lisa. Should I be seeing it, or? There we go. So don't think about it too long. Go with your first reaction, and we'll give you a few minutes to do that. I have a message on my set that says hosted panelists cannot vote.
That is correct. So you and I can't vote.
Okay. All right. So everyone else can. Great.
Yep, as we're letting people go through that, I was thinking today, because as you know, I truly was so excited to talk about this, and I am a little bummed I can't do this self-assessment now, but I am going to do it later, and I will let you know my score.
Cool.
And I was trying to remember, because I knew we met prior to your move to Gartner, and then I realized it was when you were with your last organization, and I was presenting to you, ironically, because I came in to do a presentation about employee experience and XLAs. And then when I found out about your background and what you were doing, I said, that is such a great topic for the Academy. So if you would tell us a little bit, while folks are going through this, tell us a little bit about your journey to Ikigai.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lisa. So it started a long time ago, but I'm going to start from where you just left off, Lisa. I was in a position that required a specific skill set. I had already gone through lots of different certifications, but this particular position required an organizational change management skill set. And as I became part of the team, I was recognized for that skill, and they asked me to be a key personnel on a very major proposal. Now, this proposal was multi-billion-dollar. They had coaches coming in, helping us to write our scripts, and we were expected to get in front of an audience of government officials and present our pieces by memory. We were not allowed to have notes, a talk track, anything. I got notice that I had to do this with only about 2.5 weeks preparation, whereas the rest of the team had 3 months. So for me, I had a personal barrier, and that barrier was being an introvert. So I am normally an introvert, and suddenly I had to not only memorize a lot of things before getting in front of a bunch of people, I had to do it in a way that was authentic. And interesting enough, it had to do with the military. And my brother was a Marine, and he passed away in 2012. And the proposal that we were bidding on had to do with fixing things, the transforming the military. And one piece of that was parachutes. And my brother was a paratrooper. So he didn't pass away with the parachute, but I tied his story to my piece of the presentation, because the message was, if this military service did not change the way they were doing things, then we would lose people's lives, because there wouldn't be enough attention to the safety of the materials they were using. And so in my presentation, I was talking not only the technical aspects of OCM, but I told a story that was a personal. So part of my personality came out, and it wasn't just a dry presentation. Now, at the time, I didn't really know how this was being received, but at the end of the presentation, the government leader stood up and he said, "Gabrielle, thank you for your pulse-pounding presentation." I hadn't realized that I had been so passionate about what I was talking about until I looked down and I saw my glasses, and I had been doing the presentation, like talking with my glasses, and one of the arms had flown off and I had broken them. I had no idea until I sat down. And we won the proposal, which was great. But what it made me realize was that my personal barrier of being an introvert and not trusting in myself kept me from reaching a potential I never really thought I would reach.
And I think that's pulse pounding potential, friend.
Exactly. So that then led me into going back to my past, where I come from Hong Kong, actually. So there's a lot of spirituality and reflection. So that part of my personality came to bubble up again, and I began to become retrospective and really think about what I want. And after that proposal, my team then decided, or my supervisors decided, they wanted me to build a practice. And then I felt like I'm going to be pigeonholed. And so then that was the time I left. But I'm going to talk about some of those things as we go through the presentation. And hopefully you'll be able to relate to it.
So I think we're ready to end the poll. It looks like almost everyone has had a chance.
All right, do get a score? Oh my gosh, look at that. Wow. Okay. So these are the total results. Okay, so hopefully everyone was also kind of jotting down the numbers for each of the questions that they were answering. So you'll get a sense of your individual baseline. If not, we can just let you look at the screen a little bit longer. You can quickly write down your 1 to 5 ratings for each of this. And the reason why is when we get to the end, you're going to see whether you, or not at the end, I think it's actually the next slide, you're going to see if you're rating at a low, medium, or high. And so if you're low or medium, then you're going to want to look at which elements of Ikigai you strongly disagreed with, or you neither disagreed or agreed with, because those are the ones you're going to want to work on in order to get to your potential of fulfillment. So,
and isn't this interesting? I don't know if you can also see me scrolling through this, but you know, everyone can scroll through. I haven't seen a single strongly disagree, and I have seen quite a bit of strongly agree.
yeah.
And I think my favorite is that I have a strong and meaningful relationship with the people around me. 25% strongly agree with that. And you know, there's a lot of 25%. So we have a pretty well-rounded audience with us today. I love that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. And what we can and will do is this will come up as like a bar chart once we close down the webinar, and we'll include that in the screenshot when we post the recording.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, that was a big work effort today. So hopefully you feel more at ease now.
And right. Gabrielle, I think it's a little bit awkward when the person not presenting is still on camera. I'm going to turn off my camera because now you're really going to get rolling for us, but I'll be back on camera and back with hopefully a lot of Q&A and comments to share at the end.
Great. All right. Thank you, Lisa. So moving on to aligning your why. So we're going to take it up a notch and talk about resetting your mindset by talking about your why. So the diagram at the right represents 4 elements to bring you in sync with your purpose, the Ikigai, right? So you notice Ikigai is in the middle, and it's intersected by these 4 fundamental elements. And these relate to your why. And you could answer these questions silently, but I'm going to say them so you've got time to reflect. So are you doing what you love? Meaning this is what you're passionate about. You're living your life's mission. Are you doing something the world needs? And this is where your mission drives your wider purpose. Are you being paid for your work? So your actual career that requires specific skill sets. And finally, are you good at what you're doing? So these are simple yes/no questions. Just think about it. And if you had jotted down your 1 to 5s on the questions before, you'll see in the white box down here, your personal rating of how close you are to finding that balanced center. So when you, this is going to be your self-assessment when you get that number, and we're going to use that. We'll go back to it at the end of the presentation. So you should be able to tell if you're falling into a low range or a medium range, and then you're going to want to consider this as your awareness baseline and reflect on the questions that you see in those four circles there, and try and analyze where you're not as in sync as if you'd want to be. So for example, if you're doing what you love, but you're not being paid for it, something is out of sync, and you'll want to focus on what that is and get it in alignment with who you are and your why. So now your mind is kind of reset to the conversation, the 4 elements we're going to be talking about. And now we're going to move into exploring your journey with intention and passion. And we're going to look at the most valuable certifications in the IT industry that aligns with who you are and your reason for being. So I've called this defining your journey. So whether you're at the start, middle, or end of your career, it's never too late to set your intention and align it with your passion. So since I'm in business IT, I have focused on the IT certifications. And on this slide, you'll see a variety of IT certifications with approximate salary ranges. So one of the 4 key elements we've talked about so far is, what are you paid for? So starting at the top left, I'll put my arrow here. Starting at the top left, you'll see the Scrum and Agile certifications, the approximate salary range for those certifications. If you move down here, these are the salaries for Lean Six Sigma belt. And as you notice, it ranges from the very basic foundation at $65,000 to a master black belt at $205,000. Over to the middle box, you'll see a variety of other certifications here. And you should notice one thing. Most of these represent hard skills. The only certifications here that fall closely into the soft skill category are the organizational change management, the ITIL 4, and the program project management professional. So just keep that in mind as you look at the salary ranges. So in today's rapidly changing environment, having multiple certifications is critical, but it's even more important to have certifications that straddle your various interests and complement your hard and soft skills. So in other words, combining your technical with your interpersonal. And that kind of goes back to the story I started with at the beginning of this presentation. Excuse me. So the reason why this is important is because it shows, when you have your soft skills, it shows that you've invested the time and effort into developing skills and abilities that contribute to your team and to your organization, and that you've got some emotional intelligence that you probably have heard about as EQ. And then the hard skills certs are evidence of your proficiency in specific tools or methodologies. So let's take an example. If you were to combine some of your Scrum certifications, let's keep out the coach, just maybe the first 3 here, and you had a Lean Six Sigma belt, and then you planned on getting an ITIL 4, an OCM, and a PMP, which is manageable. It sounds like a lot, but it is manageable. You would be considered a unicorn because you have a mix now of IT, process, management, and transformation skills focused on the people side of change. So in other words, you've got an IT background with interpersonal skills. This type of mix puts you at an executive level where you're coming in and you're negotiating stock options, quarterly and end-year bonuses, and even executive retirement options. So if you want to leverage the power of your certifications, the key to that is supercharging them with who you are and your why. So let me give you an example. If your passion lies in environmental sustainability, consider how your IT skills can contribute to green technologies or data analysis for sustainability initiatives. Now, there are a few tips or rules of thumb that you want to keep in mind. And I've bucketed them into 3 categories. I'm going to tie them back to Ikigai so you can start seeing where the thread goes. So the 3 categories are: there are no limits, actively build and adapt your personal brand story, and go with flow and gratitude. I'm not going to read through the bullets, but I will pull out a few big ideas and tie them back to the Japanese concept of reason for being. So if we start with there are no limits. So this idea lines up with, are you doing what you love? Are you embracing your passions without self-imposed boundaries or limitations? Are you pursuing what you love, even if it's challenging? So establishing that clear intention is linked to fulfillment. And if you've got those clear intentions, you're going to be able to overcome those personal and professional barriers that are holding you back. Now, build a brand story. With a no limits mindset, you're poised to build a brand story that aligns with the element of what you're good at. So your brand story is that narrative, the essence of your personal and professional unique qualities, strengths, and expertise. So don't shy away from showcasing your expertise. Social media, storytelling, linking your experience to facts, putting your certs in your email signature line. You worked hard for them. Let your personality shine through. Don't bend to societal expectations or preconceived notions of what is possible. And the two examples I have is earlier on when I told you that story that I did a good job and then I got pigeonholed in that one career path, which wasn't my goal. Another example is I worked at a company once where they kind of frowned upon people putting their certifications in their email signature line. But if you don't take actions like that, you'll never be able to get the word out that you're good at something, that you have a skill or an interest, and that you've got the certification to back that up. So this is part of your story, and there are different modes, modalities you can showcase. So that's just a simple one. And I would say, if you find yourself in a company, as I did, go ahead and put your certs in your byline. It's important to get that message out. So let's talk about flow and gratitude. These are probably the most important bucket out of the three of them. So flow and gratitude match up with the element of what the world needs. So if you think of flow as complete immersion, where you focus on an activity that makes you feel energized and excited. If you can't think of anything right now, cast your mind back to when you were a child. What hobbies did you have that you don't pursue anymore? So that'll help generate some thoughts about where perhaps you start to go out of sync. So when you do this, when you think of flow, you're doing three things. You're using your expertise to its fullest potential. You're offering the best you have. And by doing that, you contribute to meeting the needs of others. Flow activities also add value because it triggers your creativity to innovate on solutions, and those solutions address the world's needs. And finally, when you're in a state of flow, you inspire other people because your excitement shines through, and then that motivates them to pursue their passions. It's a ripple effect, and it causes positive change in the world. Now, in terms of gratitude, so this is the practice of appreciating and acknowledging the good things in life. And it involves recognizing our blessings, the opportunities, and positive contributions of others. So gratitude aligns with the element of the world, of what the world needs in three ways as well. So first is collection and collaboration. So when you appreciate contributions and efforts of others, you cultivate a sense of collaboration and cooperation. And this helps create an environment where people can come together to address the world, the needs of the world more effectively. Second, gratitude fosters recognition, which encourages you to acknowledge the valuable contributions by your coworkers, your teams, and even your supervisors. By celebrating their efforts, you promote a culture of recognition and encouragement and motivating others to continue their positive impact. Where I am right now, we have a system where you can go into Workday and provide feedback to anyone. I can even go in and provide feedback to my supervisor. So when I first started, I had volunteered to do a happy hour to help them out, help some of the ladies out. And it was really surprising because after that happy hour, a few days later, I got a notice there was something in my Workday feedback. And I thought to myself, I've only been here a few weeks, no one really knows me. But it was the lady who had spearheaded the happy hour. And she wrote a very nice message in there thanking me for volunteering to help her. And that made me feel really good. And so this is how you can foster that positivity. So The final piece for gratitude is the positivity that I just mentioned. So like flow, gratitude has a ripple effect. So when you express gratitude, it benefits the recipient. So in this case, I got a benefit, and it uplifts the overall atmosphere. And quite frankly, when I got that message in Workday, it triggered a thought in my head that, oh, I'm going to actually do this too for other people on my team and who I work for. So you see how it can multiply, as a multiplier effect. And I can say that, at least for me, this was inspirational. And as I start giving feedback to others, it's going to make them feel encouraged, and the whole well-being of the team just is amplified and improves. So now that we've talked about rules of the thumb and the tips, let's go on and talk a little bit about tricks. So you want to own your brand by being the narrator of your story and not letting others pigeonhole you or narrate for you. So you need to be in control, and it's very easy to forget about that and let others celebrate you for something that maybe you're not so passionate about, but you're good at. So when you're branding your story, I highly encourage the use of digital media. It amplifies your voice in so many different ways. So let's take LinkedIn as an example. First, you want to make sure you have the best background photo. For example, if you're in IT, you don't want to have his banner on the back to be a Hawaiian drum. It doesn't make sense. And I say this out of personal experience, because when I first started, I picked out a picture of a Hawaiian drum because I thought it looked cool, but it had nothing to do with what I was doing for my professional career. And I went to a Women in Technology event, and they taught quite a few different tricks on LinkedIn. And one of them was make sure you match up your interests and skills with that background in LinkedIn, for example, or any social media that you're going to be using. Make sure you have a good headshot. Don't leave it blank, because people want to connect, and it helps to have a visual of who you're connecting with. Vet the people who want to be connected to you, because their reputation becomes linked to yours. So don't just accept to raise your numbers of how many connections you have. Take the time to ensure that these are the people you want as part of your reputation and organization. And then when you post or you repost articles or thoughts or videos, try to keep the subject matter related to your unique skill sets and your passions. So again, tying it back to your why and who you are. Don't be afraid to follow other professionals and leverage their networks. I'm working with some folks on my team who were concerned about sending out connect messages to folks in the government they didn't know, but they knew they had to work with. And I explained to them, all you can get is a no, and you're already at no. So go ahead and send a message to connect. And so they were surprised that they received a reciprocity message. So don't be inhibited by your fears. It's really going to stop you from getting into the balance you're trying to get into. A couple more things here. So elevator pitch and power bite. So everyone knows what an elevator pitch. Most writers need one when they're pitching their story to a producer or a publishing house. So professionals need one too. And I'm going to tell you a story. It has to do with an elevator. I got stuck in one with for a short period while I was working at the World Bank with the head of the World Bank, and I didn't have an elevator pitch, and it was a lost opportunity, because had I had one, I would have been able to promote myself or get a conversation going on, and just it's just one of those easy things that you can practice and create, and you'll always have it on the tip of your tongue for those unexpected moments. Power bites. So think of these as sound bites. So newscasters often have them on the news where they get your attention, but for professionals, they're not sound bites, they're power bites. So these power bites are what you want to use in your resume or in your interview. You want to make it interesting. You want it to have backed up by a number. And if you can weave in a personal aspect, even better. I'll give you an example. This is one of my examples, and it has triggered further conversation. So in some of my interviews, I advertised that I was recently a key personnel on a multi-billion-dollar contract that I helped win for my company, and it was the largest win the company's had in 61 years history, in its 61-year history. When you're in an interview or you're trying to showcase your experience, a comment like that or a paragraph like that often triggers interest and gets the conversation going. And then you can weave in some of your own storytelling with what your passions are. So finally, let's talk about knowing your worth. This is important to a lot of people, right? So know what you can be paid for. Actually do the research. Don't sell your brand cheap. It's not just about the average salary that we saw on the slide before or the range of the salaries. You really should have the intention of having a number in your head of what you want to be earning. So learn how to tie in your uniqueness so that you can get more than that average salary. Highlight the connections between your certifications, your experience, and your passion. So before you go into negotiations, you also want to know, what are you willing to sacrifice? Is quality of life more important than a huge paycheck? Then and if it is, you negotiate for more time off or working from home. You also want to try to avoid what the industry sometimes calls golden handcuffs. So for example, oftentimes at senior levels, you'll be offered stock options or a supplemental executive retirement plan, but these come with disincentives. So if you end up accepting something like that at a firm and you realize after a few months or a year that it's really toxic and it's not aligned your why with who you are, and you leave, you're leaving money on the table. So you want to be very realistic about how much value those types of incentives are going to provide you. Watch out for those sign-on bonuses. Oftentimes nowadays, especially, you have to pay it back if you leave the company early. And with COVID and the Great Resignation, there's probably a lot of people who left money on the table. So you want to plan for that. And if you're in sync with your Ikigai, you'll know when you in a situation that you have to walk away from, that you're at peace with it versus having regrets and then rehashing that in your mind for days to come. I will say in my experience that once you've attained Ikigai, then opportunities will actually open up for you and you won't land in toxic situations. So let's go on and talk a little bit more about pitfalls. So we're back to certifications, and I'm not going to read all the bullets here. I'm just going to pull out a few that I think are worthwhile keeping in mind. So don't get a certification without a goal in mind. Again, back to your attention. This ties back to your passion, your interest, who you are. Make sure it's aligned with your Ikigai. Don't be shy about getting the word out about how great you are. So you can do this by helping other people through mentoring or publicly celebrating them as their sponsor. And this is tied to the element of what the world needs. So earlier we talked about different types of certifications and melding them together, straddling them. So it's important that you look for ways to cross-pollinate your skill sets so you don't get pigeonholed by your certifications. Or held back because you don't have the right mix of skills. And then, of course, don't be afraid to ask your employer to pay for a certification that isn't on the company's training site. You'd be surprised how many employers will say yes if you can make a good business case. So how do we take all this information and use it to unleash the unicorn or the Ikigai? So we're going to move on to the next slide to find out. So if you look at the visualization on the left-hand side, think about how you can balance the 4 elements that make up Ikigai. If you see on the circles, they've got black strings kind of coming out. And this is where we talk about changing a sense of satisfaction, but feelings of no positive impact on the world. We're talking about changing a sense of comfort, the feeling of emptiness. We're talking about changing a sense of excitement, but a feeling of uncertainty. And then we're talking about changing a sense of delight and fullness, but without the pay. So how do we get these all in sync? If you look to the right, it's really quite a simple process. And this visual was suggested by a fellow named Ken Moji. He's a Japanese neuroscientist and researcher who came up with 6 steps to get you to where you want to be. So let's quickly go through them, and I think it'll make sense. So we want to start small. And here's an example. Take the time to look at the details of the IT certifications needed to achieve your goals. Make a plan for when you want to achieve each certification. And then be aware of what they require, because some require a certain amount of experience before you can even sit for the exam. The second step, release yourself. So release and allow yourself to look for opportunities that permit you to combine your technical expertise with your passion. You want to use that awareness baseline to work on removing both the internal habits and bad habits that keep you from succeeding, to aligning your why with who you are. Live in harmony and sustainability. So this is all about flow and gratitude. So think beyond yourself and celebrate others. You've heard this next one a lot, I'm pretty sure. Be in the here and now. Being in the present helps to release the inner child, and it brings happiness to others as well. So I'm working with a lady right now who I was told before I even met her, she's very difficult and challenging, and you're not going to get anywhere with her. When I met her, she was a bit cold. She had her walls up, and in an effort to break the ice, I invited her to several of my meetings, so there was transparency. But it wasn't until our third meeting when I actually started to talk about this presentation. And all of a sudden, her whole energy just changed. And a smile brightened her face. And she said to me, oh my gosh, we met for a reason. And she ended up talking about her work, which is based on the pursuit of happiness. So there's a lot more there, but I pulled that out because if you're able to be in the here and now, you would have breakthroughs in your relationships that are completely unexpected and worth the while. So find joy in the small things. So this is setting a pattern of using little things to create rewarding experiences. For example, starting off your day, journaling, exercising, meditation, enjoying your favorite morning brew. It's a habit that brings you contentment, and it's small, but it sets you in the right mood for your day. So for me, I've got a lot of birdhouses around my house, and there are bluebirds that come in, pretty cardinals. So while I'm having my coffee, I'll look out the window and I'll watch the birds start their day, which is, it's kind of neat. At least I think so. So then we've covered, I think, pretty much find the joy in small things. Yes, that we just talked about that, right? I would add one more step here. And that step is this: iterate and adapt. So as you grow and evolve, your passions and interests may change. So you want to continually reassess and refine them so you stay aligned with your purpose. I started my career out in international development. I worked for refugee organizations, and I went from there to working as a civilian for the military, and then from there to being in business IT. So if I didn't keep readjusting and looking at those 9 questions and answering them and being able to then pivot, I would be really out of sync. So that would be the actual last step I would insert in this process that you see to your right. So the next slide is just a little bit humor as we begin to wrap up. So breaking barriers, it's like a recipe. So whether they're personal or professional, you have to know yourself to set your intention and to keep things exciting with your passion. And you must use your emotional and intellectual IQ to leverage those tips, tricks, and avoid those pitfalls I mentioned earlier. So I want to thank everyone for your time. I suggest that in 6 months or so, you do another self-assessment and compare it to today's baseline results, and then see if you've managed to make the changes you'd hope to make and achieve in Ikigai. And I'll wrap up with my information. If anyone wants to chat some more, this is my LinkedIn contact information, and I'd be happy to talk about just about anything.
All right, Gabrielle, before I let anyone else have questions, I have some thoughts and some comments. First of all, I really loved it. Second of all, I'll take this offline with Nina, but actually what I would like to do, if we can embed it into the YouTube, I want to take the quick Zoom survey that we did today and port it out to a tool that we use for other surveys, so that folks can come back and they can get their answers and they can do a comparison later. And I apologize that I didn't have the foresight to have that set up for today. But for those of you that are with us today and those of you that are listening to this in its recorded form, please know that we are going to, if our technology will allow it, we will get that done for you guys. So I just loved the rebranding of PowerBite. I mean, because I agree wholeheartly. Everyone needs to have their elevator pitch, and it needs to be, I don't know, about them, about their family, about the company they work for. But, going through life and engaging with people, I think, is an important part of why we're here as human beings. And so to know in your mind sort of the positive story of you or where you are in your life, I recommend that to people all the time. I also, can you go back to maybe 3 slides up, where it's a pretty long list? Yes.
This one, yes.
So the pitfalls. So reputation matters, and to grow your network outside of the business. For the practitioners that are on the call with us today, we always do a call to have practitioners come in and talk about either where they are with their service management journey inside their organization, or opportunities like this for all of us just to, take an hour from our day and learn about something that's important that maybe we're not even aware of. So this is my official call to action. I'm always here to help with that presentation, as is Donna Knapp, who is a global presenter, we'll call her. We'd love to help people take this next step. And if you would like to use our webinar format, we've been delivering these webinars since 2007. We're as always, we're here for you guys. So I wanted to call that out before we started looking at. Okay, our first question is, so you really talked about being in the here and now. One of the challenges that people face in the IT industry is seeing what they know become obsoleted over time. What advice do you have for people who are stuck in the way we've always done things? It's the way we've always done things here.
Yeah, that is actually what we call in organizational change management resistance. So when you get that type of pushback, there are actually tactics to address it. And one way is to do a survey among those who are resisting to find out what's the root cause for that comment. We've always done it this way. Is this coming from someone who is older, about to retire, and doesn't want to have to learn a new process or go back to training? Or is it someone who perhaps is in the middle of their career, maybe on the older end, and they are afraid that if you automate something that is typically manual and they're the person who does the manual work, this change is going to push them out of a job. So when you have people pushing back with comments like that, there's something driving it. And usually it's a what's in it for me mentality. If I make this change, what's in it for me? So being able to communicate the benefit and the risk of not changing will help to turn that resistor into a change agent or a champion.
I agree. And I think with technology in particular, if you end up being the administrator of a system that is very quickly becoming legacy, then it is your responsibility, particularly if you enjoy the organization that you work for, to engage with the team who is working with the newer technology and to become not sunsetted with that legacy technology, because we know that people are very, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over the years with people who have been very concerned about that. And that's always my advice, is go learn something else. Go, whether it's internally, start going to the brown bags that your company has, but whatever is important to your CEO as an employee of the organization. I mean, if you're working in the warehouse, if you are working on the service desk, if you're in the executive suite, you should at least be aware of what the CEO of the organization is saying their priorities are, and then looking to see how you can align your personal goals with those organizational priorities. Oh, can you please go back to the screen with your contact information? Folks are asking that.
There you go.
And I will tell you a story here. So we're a 20-year-old company, almost about to be, and look at me, still in my 20s. And our newest employee is about 8 years with us. And she is so awesome, because we were a little bit it's the way we've always done it. It was comfortable for the rest of us. And she came in and really, to this day, still challenges us to think differently, to, one of our mission at the Academy is to make it easy for people to do business with us. And sometimes our own internal processes, like any other organization, would get in the way of that. So she really challenges us to break those barriers. And fortunately, our culture is a culture that's ready for that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lisa, actually, the whole idea of culture. So culture is people driven. And unfortunately in IT, oftentimes vendors come in with solutions that are only focused on the IT transformation, and they forget about the people who you need to come along with that change. So balancing the two will dramatically, bolster the results of being successful.
I'm going to do something that I normally never do in our webinars. But if those of you guys follow the Academy, you know that in one of our classes, the Certified Process Design Engineer, we use 2 hashtags, hashtag Lisa's favorite class and hashtag Donna said Deming, which is the only industry-wide drinking game. Because our curriculum development manager, Donna Knapp, is just, she is such a student of all things Deming, and has talked so many times about taking what Deming thought from the 50s to the 80s and modernizing it and moving it forward. But in that class, we have the 10 steps for, the class is about engineering, re-engineering, and process improvement, right? So certified process design engineer. But and I'd always considered myself a process junkie. And pretty good with process, because I'm one of those people, my brain works like dominoes. Once I can line up the dominoes, I can see from the beginning to the end and take the conversation, the project, whatever it is, down the road. I learned so much in that class. And one of the most important things I learned was finding your change agents, where to find them, how to find them. And so, if any of you guys have ever thought about joining us and becoming a certified process design engineer, and I know this is pretty salesy and I apologize, but as a lifelong learner and educator, when I tell you guys hashtag Lisa's favorite class for the last 16 years, there's really a reason. So, and you know what, we just, I think as I was saying that, we just got a question about lifelong learning. Oh, people are saying how awesome CPD is. I know, hashtag. Can you talk about the value of lifelong learning? And also, it's a 2-parter, can you speak to folks who take a class, but not the exam associated class?
Sure, of course. So the value of lifelong learning is important because we all grow and change, right? So just from a personal perspective, I kind of mentioned in my story how I was working with refugees in international development, and then I worked for the military, and then now I'm in IT. I never thought that would have happened, at the start of my career. It certainly wasn't on my agenda, but lifelong learning actually brought me to where I am today, because as my interests and passions changed, so did the type of courses and certifications that I chose to take. And that happened because I was going with the flow. I was following my Ikigai. So when you do that, sometimes you don't really have a vision of the end goal, but you're compelled to follow that path because you're listening to your internal voice, and that's going to guide you to which types of certifications you should be striving to get. And if you don't, everyone knows that this is probably the slowest pace of change we're going to be at in our lifetimes, with the way that IT and AI is transforming everything. So the risk of not being engaged in lifelong learning is that you're going to be left behind. And I don't think that's a spot most people, want to work, to be in. So as for folks who take a class but not the exam, I would ask the why. Like, there's something not aligned with the why and who you are. Because if you're aligned with your why and you're aligned with who you are, then you had the intention to take that class for a specific goal. And for some reason, you didn't take the test. I mean, this could be a range of factors, fear of the exam. Some of these exams are pretty intimidating. Fear, some people are afraid of failing, and some people are actually afraid of succeeding, because if you succeed, then it means the expectation is now you are skilled in whatever that certification is. And if you don't have the experience, you may feel like an imposter. But all those barriers will be broken down if you start with the clear intention of why you're doing it and the passion that you want to do it. So when I see people who, they tell me they took the class, but they didn't take the test, automatically I think something's not in sync then. Were you forced to take the class, but you didn't really want to? I would encourage anyone, even if you've got those feelings of fear or insecurity or whatever it is, even if your employer says you have to take the class, just take the exam. Usually, if in this day and age, a lot of these exams, if you don't do well, you get a second one for free, and you might as well do it because you took the class. So, that it doesn't make sense not to take that next step. So that would be my two-pronged answer to the question.
Well, great answer. Thank you. And I think the number one answer might be, this is just, my informed decision, my own brain. Yeah, test phobia is part of it, but I really think just life got in the way, right? Because got back to class. That's why we always recommend to folks, block out some additional time on your calendar for study, communicate. That's what you're going to do to your boss, who, by the way, 99.9% of the time, at least the alumni here at the Academy, your boss is paying for it. Behooves them for you to take that couple of extra hours and complete the final step. And I love one of the things that you had on the pitfall slides was to make sure that you come back out and you share the knowledge. And so we always recommend that to organizations as well, that if you're going to go to a class either as an individual, but particularly when we're coming to do a dedicated class, have sessions after that class about the learnings. We give a personal action plan to everyone in the class, and the most successful organizations we work with are those folks who take our advice about schedule a meeting a week or a couple of days, however long you want, about that personal action plan, because every learner has an opportunity to write short-term goals and long-term goals. It's so frustrating, or I'm not going to say frustrating, it's sad and disappointing to me when organizations come and they say, okay, we're going to train 25 people on this, and then people have to run into the classroom, they get disrupted the whole time they're in class, they get out of class and they don't have time to take the exam, and there's never any follow-up meeting. That's a checkbox. And while I appreciate the organization, I appreciate very much, especially when they come to the Academy, that organizations are doing that training with just such a small bit of effort. You know, Donna Knapp, I'm thinking of an idea for a webinar as I'm talking about this, because it really is disappointing. And it's frustrating, I know, for the learners. So let me stop talking and see. We have lots of compliments. Do we have any other questions? Oh, let's also challenge leadership to explain the why. And that's a really good point. We also find that, especially in dedicated classes, we always say, who's the highest person on the hierarchy who can come into the classroom for the first 15 minutes and talk about the why and the roadmap and why they appreciate all of you guys coming into this class and spending time in the class, because it really does make a very big difference, especially in terms of engagement. You know, it's hard for our instructors when we go around the room and we talk about why you're in class, and you know, there's a persona that is because my boss told me to be here.
Yeah.
You know, so if your boss could have explained to you why you were going to be there, what you were going to get out of it, that what's in it for you, that makes, you know, makes all the difference.
So in organizational change management, they actually emphasize the sponsor, so the leadership being actively and visibly engaged. And like Lisa said, that means that sponsor or that leader is explaining to their staff the why, the benefits, the risks of not doing it, and adding on to the what's in it for me, the what's in it for the mission, and tying those two things together. Because in government, most folks are mission oriented. They take a lower pay, they're in an agency where they relate to the core values. So if the leaders can articulate the what's in it for the individual and tie that to what's in it for the mission, there's a higher chance of success for that change.
Oh, I accidentally muted myself. I owe somebody $10. We have a $10 jar because we all want to go to Mexico together.
Oh.
Oh, thank you. So Nina is putting up our deck with what's going on here at the Academy as we close out today. Listen, I can't wait to read more about this and to do the self-assessment. I just think this is so interesting, and you know, personal growth is something that we encourage. And you also, just for 1 second, to go back on the lifelong learning. Do you know, one of the most important things I've ever learned was at an ITSM conference, so just a conference that I went to. A practitioner speaker said something that resonated so hard with me, that is, I brought home so excited about it. I was so embedded it into the culture, which is, and I'm going to share it with everyone on the call because I hope maybe it'll hit for someone else too. But she said their policy is discuss, decide, champion, right? So we are going to come together as a group, and we are all going to have an opportunity to talk about the pros and cons and what we like and what we don't like. And then we are all going to decide what we're going to do. And when you leave the room, we all champion. There's not, yes, that sounds great. Yes, that sounds great. And then the next thing you know, can you believe they just said that? Can you believe they just did that? So I don't know. So discuss, decide, champion for me has been a really important, impactful one. And then this February, a keynote speaker was telling this story about she crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a sailboat by herself.
Wow.
And she had said, so and it was all about keeping a positive mental attitude. And so she said, so some days I would have to wake up with, okay, 1, and she made a 10-point scale. You're not being eaten by a shark. 2, there's not a hole in my boat. So she got to start at a 3 before the day even began. And that one's also been helpful to me. I don't have very many down days. We're very blessed here at the Academy, but I've said it several times. Okay, stop, Lisa. You're not being eaten by a shark. You don't have a hole in your boat. So that's my wisdom. And we got right to time on that. And more thank you. Great presentation, information, and discussion. Absolutely fabulous webinar. I am so glad we broke out of our mold and did this with you, and we appreciate your time and your insight so very much.
Thank you for having me. I do really appreciate it. And if anyone's interested in reaching out, I can go either way. If you want to talk more of the technical career stuff, that's easy. Or if you want to delve a little bit deeper into the balancing and aligning it with your career, either way.
Awesome. Thank you. We appreciate that. And Nina did throw your LinkedIn link right into the chat.
Oh,
So
thank you.
hopefully you'll have several people reaching out. All right, lady. Well, we don't know what our June topic is going to be, but I think it might be how to get the most from your training program. Donna's probably just slapping her head right now because I think that's a great topic. So anyway, June 15th, the third Thursday, we will be back with a interesting topic. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We always appreciate having you. Gabrielle, I hope to speak with you soon, and thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. Really appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Take care.